Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with Dr. Scott Silverstein from WellSpan Ephrata Community Hospital. He is the expert on all things vaping, and so we are chatting with him about that kind of stuff. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Kelly. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. So this is a series that we have, and we've talked about several things. I think one of the things that we really have to sort of delve into is like, how do you prevent people, especially teens, from even starting to vape? Because I think that's one, if you can prevent people from starting, then you've, sort of made everything a lot easier further down the road. So like, where do you even start?
This is a tough topic.
Yeah.
If we can assume that what we see with vaping is a public health epidemic, then it should be started on the basis of a public health intervention. We know, based on some of our talks, that between 5 and 10% of middle school students are actively vaping within the past month, and between 20 and 27% of high school students are actively vaping within the past month. So by that amount, we're talking 3.5 million middle and high schoolers. That is an epidemic. Yeah. So we need to handle this as we would a public health epidemic, and that means a multi-pronged interventional approach. And certainly we need to look at it as far as getting information out to both kids and also to parents. Now, please understand, again, as I said earlier, there's sort of two modes that we look at when we're looking at vaping. Originally, vaping was set up to help long-term wizened smokers get off of tobacco. That's really not the group that we really need to address and talk about public health-wise. It's your middle and high schoolers, and actually sixth grade students as well. So, there's, again, from a public health standpoint, we need to look at it in terms of education, also versus policy, and what kind of policies can be set up to deter those kids, from reaching out and starting vaping, and also once they've started vaping, how do we prevent those kids, or how do we get them off of nicotine? Because as we've said over and over, this is an addiction. So this is a multi-pronged approach that involves education, but it also involves policy, it also involves parents, and involves the home. So we can go into each one step by step.
In terms of education, I was doing some reading for this, and there are programs that are out there to hit kids as early as kindergarten.
I think one of the best ones that's out is called Catch My Fire. It's really popular. It's out of University of Texas in Houston. And this is basically it's really from 5th grade up to 12th grade. So it's ages 10 up to 18, which is, and again, the main groups that we're looking to hit primarily are starting with your 5th and 6th graders, at least for prevention, to stop those kids from actively vaping, to give them the knowledge base. And, that kind of program called Catch My Fire, basically, actually 7 out of 8 kids have been shown to not want to vape or not consider vaping after they've seen these 4 separate videos. They're about 30 minutes each. There's 4 of them, and it's divided up into, younger kids, middle school, high school kids. Also, we know that 40% of kids that watch these tapes, basically, if they've started vaping, have stopped vaping. So that program right now is distributed free to almost 2,000 different schools. And I can tell you, having traveled to many schools in Lancaster County, I can promise you, middle school administrators and high school administrators, they know they got a problem. So programs like Catch My Fire are outstanding because they basically are evidence-based. And that's the important thing, is to look for evidence-based materials that work.
So when you also talked about educating parents. So how do you, this is sort of one of those things that getting kids in that opportune moment at school is great, but vaping can be a cultural norm for parents. So how do you break that down?
Some of this has to be broken down through public health messaging. We've certainly done it with drugs. We've done it with alcohol. We've done it with, obviously opiates, heroin, but we need to basically do this with public health messaging. I think there's a lot of parents or caregivers out there who either, first of all, are vaping themselves, or secondly, I've talked to kids who said that their caregivers or parents actively solicit them or have gone out and bought vaping materials for them because of the mythology that these are safer for them than cigarettes. And so part of it is misery loves company, but the other thing is misinformation. And there's a dramatic misinformation program out there and a lot of myths regarding vaping. And one of the myths is that it's a lot safer than cigarettes. And for kids, that's just absolute mythology. And there's a lot of reasons why it's not true. But the point being is a lot of it's got to be about education, getting the word out. Just like kids are marketed online and through social media, young parents can do the same. You can solicit them, with messaging online, through social media, through the computer. Schools can get out the word. I know schools like Calico and actually Garden Spot were actively soliciting me to meet with parents before the pandemic. And as soon as this pandemic kind of hopefully does what it's supposed to do, one of my goals is to start meeting on a regular basis with parents or caregivers, so to give them some ideas about, again, to dispel mythology and make them realize, that they've got to be part of the answer. They've got to not provide this to kids. They need to have open conversations with kids. I mean, the most important thing is to have an open conversation in a non-threatening, type of way that basically comes down on them. Again, if this is an addiction, kids are doing this, they can't stop. They need help. And so the best thing the parents can do, number one, not be an example by vaping in front of them. And number two, not providing them with, materials to vape. And number three, we need to provide caregivers and parents with the proper information so they can give legitimate information to kids.
In terms of policy, I was looking at several articles that were talking about should they change the laws so that it's 18 as opposed to 21? I mean, it should be 21 as opposed to 18 to get these kinds of materials. There are some people who are saying that changing the age for this is meaningless, and some people say changing the age is really important. Where do you fall on that in terms of federal policy or state policy?
Good question. The policy issue is a disaster. And again, it's because part of it's federal, and the federal government doesn't want to get involved because right now the powers that are in federal government do not like regulation of anything. And locally, they're saying, oh, it can go to the states. The problem with the states are they are willing to regulate, but the problem is, like in Pennsylvania, our local government and state government does not like to regulate. And the concern is, even when there is regulation in about 6 to 7 other states, they've tried to hyper-regulate this. What happens is big tobacco that owns these companies comes in, they lobby the crap out of local politicians. So whenever there has been an aggressive stance by the state, what's happened is lobbying has come in and destroyed it. So there's a tremendous amount of lobbying because this is big. We're talking, remember, $50 to $60 billion industry. They're not going to go down lightly. To answer your original question, one of the best things and few things that the federal government did that I strongly agree with is rising the age of which you can sell tobacco products to people under the age of 21. That means because vaping is considered a tobacco product is considered that solely on the basis of if it contains nicotine. So anything that contains nicotine is tobacco. Vaping falls into that. The major benefit of moving that age from 18 to 21 is actually one simple thing, because the ages of 18 to 21 if you let that available, well, right now you have a lot of kids under that age who have been getting fed vaping materials from kids who are 18 to 21 who haven't gone away to college and still living at home or are home on vacation. Those kids can go online, they can buy stuff locally and do what a lot of them do, sell it or give it to kids that are younger. So by blocking those 3 years, believe it or not, a lot of those people, when they get to 21, they're out of the house or they're gone or they're away. And that leaves a lot of younger kids safer because of that reason. So for that reason alone, I like the older benefits. And again, the older they are, the older you are to buy it, that 3-year buffer can mean that you're a little bit safer because those other kids who buy them and sell them are not around. We need better marketing policies. In other words, to block marketing. In other words, right now on social media and online, you can get, marketing is just so easy and so much money is being spent by big tobacco to market kids in areas where you, me, a lot of adults are not even looking. So we got to prevent youth access. We got to prevent unfair marketing policies. We should taxate. Pennsylvania, surprisingly, does tax vaping. They do tax vaping shops, which was tentatively going to put a lot of vaping shops out of business, but it really hasn't. But taxation is a good way, not only for revenue for the state, but it prevents some people from buying the more that you tax. Licensing of vape shops has not been done uniformly in states, nor in Pennsylvania. Restrictions on marketing, education initiatives, cleaner indoor air policies. The thing that the federal government did, they did 2 policies. One was the 21 years of age, but the other, thank God, what they did was they basically blocked flavorings. And what they did was they got rid of all flavorings except for tobacco and menthol flavoring last year on all pod and cartridge type devices, which are the most popular. The problem with that is they did not go far enough. They did not get rid of vaping and flavoring in disposables or in e-liquid. So any vape shop online, any place that sells disposable cartridges, which are very popular, you can get whatever flavors you want. So they didn't go far enough. They just went part way. Flavorings are important because tobacco, not that great, but menthol, kids like menthol. African Americans, it's by far and away the most popular vaping material. So those flavors, menthol should go away, period. Disposable flavors should go away. But our politicians don't have the hide nor hair nor guts to do what they should because they're getting lobbied and they're not considering the public health of our kids.
It seems like in all of this that it's been so challenging to do state and federal and even local regulation that it seems like a grassroots approach is the most effective way until that regulation can change. Like, do you agree with that? Like, should we just be doing more grassroots until we can get something better on the books?
Yeah, I mean, until laws are done, we don't have any other options other than messaging. And so we need to do much better it has to be a much gotten together public health messaging online, reaching kids in schools. Schools are the front line, but again, if these kids aren't getting proper messaging at home, it's a waste of the school's time. Again, it's all about messaging, public health. We need interventions. We got to get the word out. And someone like me going to schools is a tiny bit helpful, but that doesn't come close to the tsunami that needs to be taken care of. And so it is about regulation, but it's unfair to make it all fall to the schools too. But right now, that's where the major messaging is being done. But we need a much better national message. But I don't see that happening at the moment.
Yeah, I think that, having local organizations do this kind of work seems to be a good way to at least stem the tide so that there can be more efforts going further. If you had one wish for this epidemic in terms of vaping stuff, what would you want? I know that I'm really putting you on the spot here, but there are a lot of things that need to get fixed. But if you only had one, what would you do?
Take the lobbying out of marketing. I mean, the bottom line is, as long as big tobacco and as long as they can lobby politicians to do the wrong thing, I don't have any faith that politicians will do the right thing, which is, again, ban them. Frankly, they should be banned, period. It shouldn't even be up for debate. They should be banned. And that would take care of the problem. They won't do that. So the next step would be to ban all flavorings except tobacco. They won't do that. So my one wish would be if you could take lobbying and big money out of our politicians' pockets, but unfortunately with decisions like Citizens United, that's not going to happen. There was one study that came out about 2 years ago that was involving Juul. It was by Truth Initiative, which is a great site for people to look at because they do statistics and they have smoking cessation policies. But they found that 70% of people who use Juul did not know that there was nicotine in Juul, which is one of the highest. I mean, again, remember, for each pod, it's equivalent to 20 cigarettes, one pack. And 70% of kids under the age of 18 did not even know there was nicotine. So again, it's an educational issue. And I can say, go on Truth Initiative and go on smokefree.com. But when I go to talk to audiences, they don't know about these. There's even like a little thing called, if you go on your text and you text quit Juul, there's a wonderful little texting site that will immediately go into smoking cessation. They will text you. They will check on you on a weekly basis, a daily basis, and they will give you tools to help stopping juuling and helping getting off vaping. It's called, if you just text quit Juul and hit send, you will immediately be brought into this smoking cessation, vaping cessation, but not many people know about it.
Yeah.
There are things that are out there, but boy, we need much better getting the word out there.
Well, I think that, part of our responsibility here at the Hub is to help social determinants of health. And so being able to partner with WellSpan on this is critically important. And so we are, of course, are pledging to do our part in that get out the information effort as well.
Great.
Thank you so much for this. This is knowing all this stuff. I mean, the adage, when you know better, you can do better. And so that's between you on the front lines of health and us on the front lines of social services, we will do better.
Good.
Thank you so much for this.
All right. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk about it. I really appreciate it. Really.
Absolutely.
So much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. See you again.